You know, when I was home in my district last week, I was not surprised to be approached by multiple constituents who were appalled by the radical decisions that had been issued recently by Mr. Trump's right-wing Supreme Court, particularly the U.S. versus Trump decision, which gutted the carefully constructed checks and balances on the presidency, which had been drafted by our founders to ensure that presidents would be held accountable for criminal activity and other dictatorial tendencies. I was more surprised at the number of constituents, and it was not small, who wanted to talk about the Trump court's decision to overrule the Chevron decision. I mean, administrative law is not usually the first thing that I get approached on, but at picnics and out in the community, at the grocery store, the checkout clerk wanted to know about the Chevron decision. And this is a doctrine that has required courts to defer to agencies with subject matter expertise when interpreting congressional statutes. Last month, the court said that unelected judges are not to defer to the agency experts and must substitute their own judgment when making those interpretations. And at the same time, the court removed time limits for challenging agency regulations. So as my concerned constituents realize, these decisions seriously destabilized and damaged our regulatory system. But after all, that is one of the chief objectives of the Trump transition plan, known as Project 2025, and it is wholly supported by the House's MAGA majority and the radical Trump court. But ordinary Americans are rightly concerned that these decisions have opened the door to attacks on regulations that have long kept us safe, that protect the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, the medications we take, that prevent businesses from cheating customers, and that require employers to have safe workspaces. In addition to endangering American families, these decisions will introduce uncertainty into nearly every part of our economy. And over again, I hear from the businesses in my district, they want certainty. Businesses that have operated for decades in a stable, settled regulatory environment will now have to adjust to an unstable and ever-changing landscape. This will raise costs to businesses and will raise barriers to entry for new or small firms. In the wake of these radical decisions, Americans want to see their representatives discussing how to keep them safe. They want to see us supporting bills like the Stop Corporate Capture Act, which codifies the Chevron doctrine and strengthens the federal rulemaking process. This is what we should be discussing, not a podcaster's right to advertising revenue. But that's what judiciary Republicans want to spend our time and resources on. So we're here today to discuss whether conservative commentators and websites have the right to an ad deal. Private companies are allowed to choose where they want to advertise. That's the free market, which our MAGA Republican colleagues claim to revere, except when the free market rejects their deeply unpopular messages. We're here today because our MAGA colleagues and their right-wing nutjob allies cannot accept the fact that Americans and businesses are not buying what they're selling. Chaos, conspiracy theories, lies. Their websites are being rejected not because of censorship or antitrust violations, it's because their product stinks. They are the intellectual equivalent of an Edsel, maybe New Coke, or perhaps Trump water. If companies don't want their products advertised on a website that runs headlines like Disney's not-so-secret anti-white agenda, that's up to them. It's embarrassing to demand that government guarantee ad revenue to extremist websites. These deals aren't handouts, they're earned. This Congress committee Republicans have used a corrupt interpretation of the Sherman Act to call any business activity they don't like illegal collusion. We saw the same nonsense at last month's hearing on responsible investing, or ESG, which many investment companies had implemented in response to consumer demand. Go figure. But this is how House Judiciary Republicans have repeatedly wasted congressional time and taxpayer dollars with absurd conspiracy theories, ignoring the results of their hearings and then making wild claims. Mr. Waller, we hear a lot in this committee about weaponization. Can you speak to how antitrust law is being weaponized in this hearing for political purposes?
What I can talk about is I've written and published and expressed concern going back several years about the misuse of antitrust for political purposes. Antitrust, and I used examples from both the prior Democratic and prior Republican administrations. Antitrust works best to preserve a competitive marketplace, to stop the abuse of power by dominant firms and prevent mergers that are likely to be harmful to consumers, labor, and other groups and suppliers. And that is not a Democrat or a Republican issue. That is just how the law's been for 130 years.